What's up? What's up? I was thinking today I would talk about two heavy hitters. The universe and consciousness. These are some two pretty big topics. But first, let me get my water. And then I'll be back to talk about those two things, So it's sad. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, the universe. People like to say it's a deep question. Where did we come from? We came from our mother. Let me make sure the audio, okay. No, but seriously, where did we come from? How did we go from nothing to something? And that's a good question. It's like, why are we here? Why do we feel? Connect that back to consciousness. Who am I? I don't know. I mean, we can get into the semantics of this, Big Bang, God. I don't know what else is there right now. But I think the feeling that the feeling of the solution, I mean, it's going to take time to get there, but the answer is going to be because it couldn't be any other way. Why is the earth round? Why not a triangle? Why not a plane? People get made fun of for questioning the shape. Because the knowledge has already been worked out. So I think it'll be the same thing, Obviously we don't know where we stand, but once we do, it's just going to be accepted because the scientists will tell us so. And who would we be to prove them wrong? We would just be forced to accept it, you know? But I feel like people like these questions because you can engage the imagination and keep the magic. Here on Earth, it's boring. But in the stars, anything is possible. Aliens? Maybe. A dark void? Maybe. Gods? Perhaps. But I don't think we should restrict imagination to the unknown. Like, oh, I feel safe to be imaginative in this space because other spaces I'd feel stupid for questioning. You really shouldn't feel stupid for imagining how things can be, you know? Like, I think there's a serious lack of imagination in day-to-day life, a real shortage. You know, we just get dumped sequels, uninspired, garbage, trash. No one says, yo, maybe we should put a car backwards, you know? Really wouldn't make sense. We kind of just accept the way things are. Not to say that there's no imagination everywhere, but it's like, why do people like to gravitate towards these questions? Because they push the imagination. You feel safe to explore what's possible, you know? But then you would say, well, people don't know a lot about quantum physics, but people don't engage in like, oh, what if there's little hidden cities in the little quantum realm, you know, little universes. I guess it's small, so its implication is also small. People don't think that there could be a big thing from a small thing. Maybe. What about consciousness? This one I feel like is a pretty simple question. But I don't really understand what people mean by this. We just have our chemical signals that act as reward functions. Sensory inputs get translated to chemical signals, which then go to thought, which controls muscles, which controls sensory inputs. I don't know, people would say, oh, it's so complex, we have a sense of self, we have a sense of self. But then, people see a spider and they get scared because that's what we've been programmed to do. It's like, oh, we're so complex. Oh, how could we ever understand how the human brain works? And then, it's like, oh, see boobies, I want boobies, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we obviously exist and are programmed for certain purposes. And our sense of self comes from neural circuitry that has been rewarded evolutionarily because, those who get to be selfish, there's some amount of selfishness that ultimately wins the day. I think clearly this is seen in the hetero distribution. People find in workplaces the 80-20 rule. 20% of the people do 80% of the work or impact, whereas 80% of the people have 20%. And I think this just comes down to this idea that, in a society, if you see someone else is going to do the work or sacrifice themselves, you stay back hey, you know what, I'm going to stay here while you guys do that. Save energy, more safe. And so, this person gets killed in combat, this person returns with a bunch of food, then you get rewarded for being lazy. So I think it's just a conservation of energy thing. But if we want to go deeper to consciousness, you might tie it back to your narrator. But people who do, I don't know what you call these people, but people who grew up without language. Don't have a narrator. But what I think is happening is obviously we have some sort of memory, but the memory is not stored as this is what happened. It's not like computer memory where you capture the whole file. It's like a compressed version. And so when you retrieve the memory, I think it goes back to your sensory inputs, and that generates, you regenerate the image so that you can regenerate the chemical signals so you can kind of test yourself. Imagine you saw a lion in the savannah and it ate your friend. It's oh my goodness, how could this happen? Then, when you're home, you replay the images your brain generates thoughts so that you can create a new scenario where it's like, what should I have done instead, and it's like, oh, I should have used my spear, and we should have used my friend, and we would have been able to slay the lion, So I would say, the narrator just comes from memory retrieval. That's at least the sound of it. And as for your sense of stealth, that's a specific circuitry. And that's, I guess, important to have, like I was saying here, to be selfish. People who, like monks or people who take drugs, where they have sometimes this toned down, they would get a sense of oneness. Be like, aren't we everyone? Everyone's connected. And it's like, no, you bitch. It's just like your fucking circuit that runs on individual is not running. So I guess you get this glimpse into what it could be like. But, maybe afterwards it fires up again and you're back to being you. So I don't really know what the debate is for consciousness, If you want an AI to act like a human, you'll need to understand the sensory inputs and chemical signals, how, and really how the brain is wired. But this is only for humans, Like, they've mapped brains of flies. Or earthworms. Like, if you want an AI that's self-conscious, you have to make it self-conscious, I think what people are scared of is this idea that we're not special. That we're just a program executing code. But truthfully, I think that's what the answer is going to be. And for this one, I just don't know if it's possible for us to know the answer. What we've observed from like smaller life forms, there might be some things that is impossible for us to imagine. This kind of reminds me of that idea that ideas are just neural constructs. I don't know how to flesh that out. But it might feel incredible. You know, it's like, how are we here? Why are we here? We are here because we are here. It's like, it is what it is. You think, like, why the universe, why everything? And it's just like, being has to be, because without being, we would not be. You're like, why the universe? Why everything? And it's like, well, you know, it's just, you know, it is because we can feel it, you know? Like, if there is no universe, there would be no us. If there is no us, there would be no universe. The universe exists in our minds as a neural construct, and our minds exist in the universe. It's like you can't have one without the other, you know? And speaking of this, I think it's interesting that since everyone has different brains, there exists a whole plethora of perspectives of the universe. You know, people like to think about the essence of things. What is the essence of things? Well, things are only given their shape because we can see them in our sensory inputs. We ask, what is a ball? Well, it's feeling plus seeing plus touching plus, now we would say, what's the logical element of it? It's a tricky question. But anyways, the essence of it is all of what this is, you know? That's what it is. That's what makes the object shape. And when we see something different, like, I don't know, what's the difference from a ball? A triangle. It would be the same thing, just differently weighted. do these objects exist in their purest form? It's like, you know, if a tree falls in a forest without anyone on to watch, did it really fall? So if no one sees it, does it really exist? Like, imagine if there was like a mirror universe. There's our universe, an invisible mirror universe. Does it really matter that this exists? If it's invisible to our perception? Like, if something is invisible to sight, sound, like anything, you can't use anything to detect it. Maybe like dark matter or whatever. I don't know what gives dark matter. I mean, we can see it and how it affects gravity, but we can't really touch it. Like, you know, this what people would say, like, it's fake, you know, it's not real. The only thing that gives objects weight is our ability to sense it. And if we can't sense it, then there's no idea. There's no essence to it. It's invisible. Now we would say what's logic, because people would say logic is the essence of things, you know. I don't know, would it be just electrical signals? Maybe. They say the idea of neurons that fire together, wire together. I guess the feeling, the logic, is that you're navigating some kind of map. A could be to C, to answer. So we would say this is some kind of spatial relation of things. Whereas I would say feeling is the superhighway. This is more like subtle. This is very versus like if you need to feel something in the moment, you go fast to it. You know, it's like, oh, we'll navigate. We'll be like, this is like pedal to the metal. We're gonna be doing stuff. But man, I'm lost. I don't know. So what does this all mean? I think it's all just tied to perception. You know? and the million different ways we can experience something. I think the important thing here is to kind of accept well, I don't know. I don't think there is a conclusion. I don't know. You know, I'm kind of out of steam. It just is. That's the tricky thing. People like these questions because they're very open-ended, but the trick of it all is it just is. And it can't be any other way. The earth may be round, or it may be a triangle. We decided it was round. And why is it round? Because it couldn't be any other way. So that's what I think those answers are. I guess these aren't, I'm not really challenging myself because I don't go into the details, but this is my high level overview. It's like, you can think about it, but there's no point because the answer is always just going to be, it just is, you know? Like, why is something the way it is? But I guess people would say, oh, once you know how it works, you can hack it or optimize, you know? But I think why these questions capture us is because they have magic to them. They invite possibility. You know, you talk about a game. And the game is boring when there's just optimal moves. It's like, oh, you have to do that. You have to do that. You have to do that. People like, you know, oh, you can just walk around and do this, you know. But maybe we should invite more of this mindset back to Earth. You know, go from the stars and bring it to Earth. And see possibility in the everyday. Not as the world is, but as it could be.